Good morning, everyone. It is 11 o'clock on a Thursday morning, which means it is time for another installment of Fresh from Maryland, Maryland Snap Ed's series about all things to do with eating local foods, buying local foods, storing them, preparing them, really taking advantage of the wonderful things coming from Maryland farms this season. And when they're fresh, they are abundant at the market. They can be less expensive at the market. You can access them using your benefits. And most importantly, for those of us who love to cook and love to eat, they are just delicious when they're coming in fresh from farms. So today we are joined by Lynn Mateva. She's one of our seasoned chefs here on our Facebook Live series. Lynn is our SNAP Ed educator in Wacomico County on the eastern shore of Maryland. So we're going to be talking about greens today, but before we get started on that, let's do our usual market shout out. So what market do you want to shout out? Farmers Market there in Wacomico County.
Yeah, we have the Camden Avenue Market here in Wacomico County that is every Tuesday from 2:30 until in the summertime they're a little later, I believe around 6, and in the winter they're year-round too, and they accept benefits, and they have lots of vendors with fresh produce.
Wonderful, thanks for sharing that. We will put the information on that market in the chat, and just a reminder, you can spend WIC checks at the farmers market. I'm pretty sure the Camden Avenue, it indicates in the market directory that they accept the WIC checks. So WIC checks are coming out over the next couple weeks for WIC participants to spend at farmers markets. And also the Camden Avenue Farmers Market, it does indicate in the Maryland market directory that they accept EBT benefits. So it's a wonderful opportunity to spend some of your benefits getting fresh, local, delicious produce. We'll post some of that information in the chat as well. And also just a reminder, some of you have already done that, some of our regular participants, to introduce yourself with your county if you're in Maryland, or your city and state if you're from outside of Maryland. And as always, share your questions in the chat and we'll respond to them as we go. So today we are talking about leafy greens. And so this is kind of a broad category. It's a little bit of a motley crew because the things that are green leaves that we eat aren't all in the same family. Some of them are more closely related to cabbage and broccoli. Some are actually related to beets. But really you can treat them very similarly in your cooking. And the one thing they all have in common is that they are super nutritious, and probably one of the things that we could all stand to add a little bit more to our diets. So Lynn, can you introduce us to some of your favorite leafy green friends that you have on?
I have here a beautiful bunch of kale, and this is full of all kinds of good nutrients. And the greatest thing about kale, I think, is that it's so affordable. This bunch was about $1.29, and it's a lot. So I've got that here. I also happen to have in my fridge some broccoli rabe. It's kind of like a cross between dark leafy greens and broccoli. Sometimes it's called Chinese broccoli. It's definitely one of my family's favorites. And we love to eat this just like steamed, and we sprinkle it with like a little bit of garlic and oil sometimes. I have I've hidden it back here, a nice clamshell baby spinach. Great leafy green that you can grab, and it's already cleaned and ready to prepare. And then today we'll be cooking with Swiss chard, and this is rainbow chard, which is really, really pretty. I don't know if you can see all those colors there, but all of these different varieties of greens are just chock full of vitamins. So they have lots of A, C, vitamin E, K. They're high in folate, and they're all really high in antioxidants. So really good nutrient-packed foods.
Yeah, and something that I've realized, I think that I didn't realize when I was a more or less experienced cook, is that you can really eat all of these raw. Some of them are a little tougher than others, but obviously baby spinach we see and we think of as a salad green you can eat raw. But something like kale, usually we think of eating it cooked, but especially in the spring, you can get it when it's young and tender. And something I like to do is drizzle a little olive oil or whatever cooking oil you use on it, and a little bit of salt, and just kind of massage it, and that softens the leaves. Yeah, called massage.
So good that way. Yeah. So good.
So before we move on, we are going to pull up a few tips on greens selection and storage. While we do that, Jessica comments, I have heard rainbow chard also called unicorn spinach, which I think is a really fun twist on it. That might be appealing. My daughter is into, she's 3 and loves everything rainbows and unicorns. So that's a great one. So we talked about some of the different types of greens. One of the tips we have to share is to look for bright green greens. They should be green without yellow spots, that they're crisp and not wilted. But if they do start to wilt, they actually can kind of, remember, you're eating living things when you're eating greens. They're full of life. They're going to give you life. So if they are starting to wilt, they can recover. You can trim the stem and stick it in a bowl of cold water, and they'll actually kind of refresh, because they're plants. They're going to take up that water into their leaves, and it'll make them crisp again. You can store them in wrapped in a paper towel in a plastic bag. This is another one where you want to kind of keep them dry, and it's usually best, unless you're really using a salad spinner and getting them really dry, that they'll store better when they're kept dry and they don't get kind of sticky and gooey from having a lot of moisture on them. They keep in the refrigerator for about 5 days. I don't know, Lynn, I keep mine a lot longer than 5 days.
I do too.
As long as they're not yellowing or getting kind of slimy spots on them.
Yeah.
So, all right, so you are going to be preparing a dish using greens, and this is using greens in sort of what I like to refer to as a sheet pan dinner. So it's something that's kind of like all goes on a pan in the oven. And it features greens, and also features fish, which is something we haven't really cooked with much here on our Fresh from Maryland or our other Facebook Live episodes. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you're going to get started on this recipe?
Sure. So normally we would put all of these in the recipe we'll be sharing today on a sheet pan and kind of putting in the oven. We're treating this a little differently today, just because we had this beautiful rainbow chard, and I didn't want to, waste the opportunity to like make these stems nice and tender. So we got to eat the beautiful stems as well. So we are actually going to start ours in a pan, and you could spray it with a little nonstick spray, or just put a little drizzle of oil in. And I am throwing my mushrooms in there. I've got about a cup of sliced mushrooms. These are Cremini mushrooms, which are baby portobello mushrooms. And depending on how tender this is, you can slice this and throw it in. As you can see, I've done with a few of these. If it's not, you just pull it out and slice them without it. But these are nice, tender young mushrooms. So it turned out okay to throw them all in here. And I've got them, I'm starting to saute them. And then while that's going on, I'm just going to slice up some of my chard here. And I'm going to start, like we discussed, with these really beautiful unicorn rainbow stalks.
It is just so pretty. It's like confetti there. And, I remember it was actually from a farmer that I had talked to me about, like, oh, people, strip greens. And I think we were talking about kale, or maybe it was collards. They strip the greens off the stems, but I love the stems. Like, just, you throw them in to cook a little sooner if you want to get them a little tender. And so I think that's one of the nice things about shopping at the farmer's market, in addition to the beautiful food, is that when you talk to farmers or even other shoppers, you can really get great tips on different ways to prepare the seasonal foods that are there.
Okay, there's something really neat too about kind of having that relationship with where your food comes from, talking with your farmer, knowing what they ate for dinner and that they're eating the same vegetables that they're selling to you. It's just a really cool vibe.
It is very cool. Yeah, so my son is a notoriously picky eater, and I will say that embarrassingly, he doesn't like strawberries. I find that very hard to understand, but lots of kids have lots of, resistance to foods, and he used to like them when he was little. But we do have a pot of strawberry plants in our backyard, and he will eat those. And I think it's because he's fascinated by it. And the farmer's market can give that same feeling. It's not just food, it's something you have a relationship with.
Absolutely. Now, our original recipe called for putting a little bit of store-bought Italian dressing and pouring it over everything. Since I got the oil in the pan and I kind of have it going, I want to add a little bit more of something in. So I'm going to add this for our flavor. I did not buy store-bought dressing because we have a recipe for homemade dressing that's very easy. It's essentially oil, vinegar, a little bit of mustard. If you'd like a little honey, I left it out today since we have it going on fish. And then I put some fresh herbs in there, and I just put it in a mason jar and shook it up. And so easy to do. And then this could go in the fridge and you have fresh dressing whenever you need it.
And we'll put the link to that recipe in the chat for folks. Wow, that already looks delicious. Now, while you are working on that, Lauren agrees that looks amazing. While you're working on that, can we talk a little bit about fish? So this recipe is flexible based on what kind of fish that you have available to you. You know, pretty much any fish you can stick in the oven, but what type of fish are you using?
Today I'm using some cod. This is what I found at my local grocery store. It was really affordable. It was on sale and it was in the freezer section. I've got it on a paper towel here just to absorb some of the extra liquid from it. But it comes in these little vacuum sealed packets in a big bag. And the only thing or I guess one of the big tips is you either want to remove them from that vacuum sealed bag to defrost in the fridge, or you can do it very quickly in a bowl of cool water in the sink with a little bit of running water over it. But because of the nature of anaerobic bacteria, you really don't want to leave them in those bags for longer than when they're defrosting. It's a very quick process. But this is a very affordable, it was a very affordable option. And, you know, sometimes, even though we live so close to the Chesapeake Bay, we don't always have a lot of fresh fish options here. And sometimes they're very expensive. So this was something I was able to pick up that probably, thanks to today's technology, was flash frozen on the boat. It might even be fresher than some of the things that are sitting in the grocery store behind the fresh counter. And I just went for cod because it's a nice firm fish. And these fillets were all like in nice kind of 4-ounce pieces, which I thought was perfect for our recipe.
I think that's such a great point about frozen being such a good option, more affordable, and really you're not sacrificing quality. The newly updated dietary guidelines, which are sort of, you know, every 5 years, the government looks at all the research that's out there about the best sort of dietary pattern that's going to be beneficial for most people. And one of the things that's emphasized in this this edition is eating fish. It's such a wonderful protein. It's a lean meat or a lean protein, and it has really wonderful healthy fats in it. So there's some fats that you really want to avoid. Trans fats you almost don't see anymore. But the fats that you find in fish are really, really good for you, good for your brain, really good for heart health. And so we are excited to feature this recipe using fish. Also, I think that we sometimes see a lot of confusing information about sustainable fish and fish farming. So if that's something that you pay attention to, you can look for fish that have the sort of sustainable catch label on it, but they're going to be more affordable if you get those frozen. A lot of times at the fresh counter, those are expensive. One last thing before we go on is don't neglect looking at canned fish. Canned salmon is an amazingly healthy food, canned tuna, and those are things that you can incorporate into your cooking to add fish to your diet. We will post some links to recipes using fish in the chat. So, but I'll let you go back to, you've got a lot of action going on there. I don't want folks to miss.
So I just, like I said, normally we would be putting everything on this pan, which there's nothing wrong with that. I just really wanted to showcase all these pretty colors and everything for you today. But you could have put everything on the pan, thrown it in the oven. I'm just putting a little bit of my dressing on this fish that's been patted dry, and then I'm sticking that in the oven. And while that's happening, I'm going to cut up the chard. There's lots of ways you can do it, but my kind of favorite way with leafy greens is I kind of lay them one on top of the other, and I just pile them up there. And then I'm going to roll them up in a really tight log. And then I'm just going to take little slivers of it off. And there really is no wrong way to do this. I just love the way these long strips are. They're fun. They're really pretty. You still see some of the rainbow popping through.
I mean, this is already looking like a restaurant-worthy meal, and I think
Hopefully we have not lost Krissa. She seems.
oh, you might have.
I'm adding them to this pan, and I'm going to add just a little bit more of that Italian dressing.
Lynn, I'm not sure if you can hear me. I think my Zoom is acting up again.
I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that. I was absent for a minute. Well, that looks beautiful. And I was just commenting that this is just such a beautiful recipe. It certainly looks restaurant worthy. And I think there's 5 ingredients, or is it 6? But it's a pretty simple one.
Oh, and I forgot, the last thing that you do need to add is I'm going to add about a medium tomato chopped up, and that kind of wraps this whole dish up.
Okay. Great. So can you hear me? Okay, great. So this is all going to go sort of over and around the fish and get that in the oven. While that is happening, while you're getting that into the oven to bake, we're going to go to actually a video that we shot at the Cambridge Community Garden. So we've been talking about accessing local foods through farmers markets. We wanted to talk about community gardening because it's a really interesting way that you can grow some of your own local food, even if you don't have space. And then also you get that sense of community and knowledge from other people who are growing foods. So we're going to go to that video and then come back and see the finished product of Lynn's work.
Hi, we'd like to welcome you to the Cambridge Community Garden on High Street behind historic Wall Chapel Church. I'm Kathy Bertman. I'm a master gardener and I'm one of the coordinators for the community garden.
Hi, I'm Marie Anderson and I'm a first-time gardener here at the Wall Chapel Community Garden, and I enjoy it immensely. Come join us next season.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Robin Herman. I'm the other master gardener here at Wall Chapel Church Community Garden, and Kathy and I coordinate this event, this experience, edit that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Bob White. I was pastor here in Cambridge. I was part of the group that helped get this established back 5 years ago.
7
years ago.
Shirley Jackson, a member of Wall Chapel, volunteer for community.
And our historian.
Yes.
She's our historian. A little history on the garden. We started 7 years ago, or this is our 7th season. This came about because a group of city officials and stakeholders, for lack of a better term, got together and were coming up with ideas to build community, to get people that might not get to meet each other to meet each other. And the then minister of Wall Chapel was Emmanuel Johnson, who had come here from St. Michael's. St. Michael's has a very active community garden, and he was part of that. And he said when he came to this church, he looked at this back lot and said, that's a community garden. So we started in on the process. The master gardeners were called in as experts. I'm using that term very loosely.
Very loosely.
Anyway,
Now you guys are experts.
After 7 years.
Through various grants. The first year we got 25 beds built and we got all the water in. There are 4 water spigots here. The second year we expanded to 50, and the other 2 have kind of just filled in the meantime. And Habitat for Humanity helped us build our shed. The next year, with a cooperative day with Habitat for Humanity, our 3-bin compost bin was built. So we've had a lot of help. We've had a lot of grant help. We've had a lot of physical labor help. And we are where we are today, and this is where it's going to stay. We're not going past 52 beds.
No.
But in fact, every year when I send out the first thing I do is send out an email to the existing gardeners, and I say, do you want your bed back? And I don't think I've ever lost more than 5 or 6. So it's getting to be difficult to get a bed here because people aren't giving them up, and you kind of got to get on the ground floor and be on the waiting list or whatever. But we've been able to accommodate almost everyone every year. So we're very, very pleased with our gardeners, and we have a wonderful mix of gardeners. We have a lot of different ages, we have a lot of different socioeconomic statuses and different ethnicities, and that's exactly what the goal was. So it's fun to see who's out here on any given time.
I have Swiss Chard, which is a popular thing, and you get Swiss Chard and you can get it with the rainbow colored stems, and you just I always saute it up with garlic and lots of butter and olive oil.
And behind Robin is a dedicated herb bed that any of the gardeners can come forage the bees, and we encourage all of our gardeners
there's some cauliflower, or is that broccoli?
That's cauliflower. We do encourage our gardeners to plant flowers to attract the bees. So
yeah, and but these are a lot of the spring crops. We have radishes, we have carrots growing in another bed,
peas, some
beets. A lot of these are cold weather, and the weather has been iffy.
What do families do with the harvested produce?
Most of it goes home to be consumed by the gardener itself. In the middle of the summer, when all of these tomatoes are producing gangbusters and we have a surplus, our gardeners will give all their surplus to the church food bank. COVID certainly knocked that out most of last year, but I think they probably will be back with that. They share with each other all the time. So lots of times you'll show up and there'll just be a box on the picnic table, which means it's a free-for-all for anybody that wants it. So, but most of it is consumed by the gardener at their own home.
Yeah, and if the church needs it, they will ask us, and there has never been a time when we have not
found
a
way to get it to them.
Found a way to get it to the church. If they need the fresh vegetables, the gardeners have always graciously donated whatever has been asked of them. But we grow the basic summer vegetables, and the point is to initially was when you're a new gardener and you get a bed, we're going to start you out with something that's easy to grow, pretty much guaranteed you're going to have success with it, and we're here to help you have that success. Then as you become more advanced, you can go into the broccoli, the peas, the cauliflower, all the other more exciting things. So
the seedlings and the seeds, how do planters get seedlings and seeds?
We have a planting day every spring, usually around Mother's Day, depending on the weather, and we will have the basics here. We will have cherry tomatoes, we will have a slicing tomato, we will have some bell peppers, anything that we have other people that actually donate full flats of other things, of eggplant and chard. We also buy seeds. They're kept in the shed for things like squash and green beans and cucumbers and things like that that are available to all of our gardeners. Our local Votech just donated, they cleaned out the greenhouse for the year and left full flats of all sorts of things on the picnic table. But it is also my understanding that if you are part of the SNAP program, you can use that to buy seedlings at a garden center. And we have several gardening centers around here that are very, very supportive of our endeavors. So
yes, all of them. If we go to them and tell them we're with the community garden, they'll either donate or they'll give it to us at cost. So,
well, and the other concept here is also, if you're talking about growing food for your family or whatever, you don't have to have a community garden bed. I grow my lettuces in 2 big pots on my back patio every spring, and we get 6 to 8 weeks of beautiful homegrown lettuce. I just go out and pick enough for dinner. You can do that with a tomato, you can do that with peppers, right. You can do that with lots and lots of things, and now they're even developing varieties that stay smaller that are for patios and pots. If you have a spackling bucket, you can have a garden and grow food for your family, and it's fresh, it's nutritious, it's cheap, you can't get any fresher than walking out and picking it and going in, washing it off and eating it. So.
Okay, so this is my garden box number 15. And here I have cabbage, which started from small baby plant. So in a matter of like maybe 3 weeks. And they come to be this size. This is collard greens, red pepper, and I decorated with a flower insignia.
Chamomile flower, yes, it smells delicious.
And this is collard as well, and more cabbage. Under here you'll have watermelon, and I have some watermelon coming up here.
I think it's just so amazing. 52 beds, and they can't even keep up with the demand that they have that many people in the community eager to garden. So if you were inspired by that video and you want to find out whether there's any community gardens in your community, or maybe you've got your eye on a piece of land, or maybe you're a member of a faith-based organization that might have some land, we're going to put a link in the chat to the Master Gardeners, and they would be a great resource for tossing around some ideas and supporting you if you decide to make this endeavor. So let's go back and see what's happening in the kitchen, Miss Lynn.
Well, I am just pulling this out of the oven.
Oh.
And it smells so good. I think one of the cool things about the fact that this fish was probably frozen so fresh, people sometimes think about fish as having a fishy smell. It doesn't smell like anything in here, but like just fresh vegetables, and it's just exciting, and all the spices and everything we used. And so then I plated one up.
So you topped the fish with the sauteed vegetables mix that you had made, and cooked that off in the oven, and then you have some additional veggies that you could save, or for another meal as a side dish, or just scarf it all down. Like I said,
yeah, I think I'd keep eating them.
Yeah, exactly. That looks restaurant worthy. Tina mentioned you could add garlic. Of course, you can always add garlic. You can add herbs. We're always talking about adding herbs, but that's going to have a lot of delicious flavor in it. So I just think that's really wonderful. Make sure you take a beautiful picture of that. And
will do.
We're grateful for that demonstration. So thanks so much for another wonderful Fresh from Maryland presentation. I hope folks are inspired to go out and buy some leafy greens. We're going to show in a minute our website where you can search our recipe database for different kinds of greens. But I hope you all are going to visit your farmer's market this week. So let's go to our closing slides to make sure everybody knows what's coming up. So next week, we're going to talk about beets. Then we're going to talk a little bit more about mushrooms. We have something really cool in the hopper for the week we talk about mushrooms. Hopefully we'll get some students involved in that one. Summer squash, I'm really excited to talk about summer squash because it is something that is so abundant and inexpensive in the summer, but you kind of run out of ideas of what to do with it. And then we're going to talk about blueberries. And every week talking about how to shop for, select, and prepare the season's best. Lots of good guests. If you're watching this on Facebook, you've already found our Facebook page. Make sure you've liked our page and turned on notifications so you get alerts when these Fresh from Maryland series are coming up. And then last but not least, here is our websites of note. So extension.umd.edu/eatsmart is our new recipe website. You can search by ingredient, which is a great thing to do this time of year when you might shop based on what looks inspiring at the farmer's market. You can go home and then find a recipe to go with that. Also, our Facebook page is there, as well as our YouTube page, and you will find all of our Fresh from Maryland episodes are on YouTube, and you'll also find lots of other nutrition education. You'll find, lessons for young students. You'll also find, step-by-step recipe videos. So lots of great content there. So thank you all for joining us. Thanks to Lynn. Also, thanks to Nate Bratko for coordinating the visit to the Cambridge Community Garden. He's our SNAP Ed educator in Dorchester and Talbot counties. So thanks to him for coordinating and doing that interview. And we will see you next week.